Hey, what's going on? It's Andrew Grillos again. I am going to tie my Great Carpholio for you guys this evening. It's a carp fly that I created. Most of my testing on this guy has been done here in southwest Montana. We've got a number of fisheries that get a fair amount of pressure, surprisingly, so the fish are kind of picky. And this fly gets it done for me for sure. It checks a bunch of boxes that are important to me. It rides with the hook point up. It drops pretty quickly in the water column, and it's got some pretty good movement to it. Yeah, hope you guys enjoy it. It works really well for me. I've seen guys in Denver catching some great big fish down there on the Front Range with it. So yeah, give it a shot. Thanks. Alright guys, let's get into it. So I've got my Carpholio in the vise here. This is kind of an olive and brown combo. This is what I'm going to tie this evening as well. This fly is great in pretty much anything from a size 8 all the way up to a size 1 if you target carp that will eat a great big fly, kind of like we have here in Montana. This one's a size 6, it's a good size for demonstrating, and maybe the most versatile size for you. Any kind of carpy color that seems good to you is probably worth a shot. I like this in olive, kind of a black-blue combo, a kind of a crayfish orange, and kind of a brown I've done well. And again, change that up. You know, if you're confident in the color that you're throwing, then by all means you should try it. Alright, so I'm going to pop this guy out of the vise and put a hook in and we'll get after it. The hook I'm tying this on is the Umpqua U555. It's a jig hook, a little 60-degree jig hook, kind of medium wire, straight shank. It's a nice hook for a fly like this, nice and strong. You can pull on a big carp pretty hard with it. So first step, I'm going to start my thread here. You never want to go up onto that little upturned part of the jig there. First step with all my fly tying, I like to lay down a nice tight thread base here. Gives us a good foundation for what we'll be tying. There we go. I'm going to take that back so I'm about even with the barb of the hook. You can see right there. The first step that I always do is tie in the eyes. So now that I'm back here, I'm going to make some open wraps. Head back up to about 3/4 to almost like 7/8 or so of the way up the shank there. Don't want to go right up to the end. You got to leave yourself room to finish this fly off. These are size medium lead eyes. They don't have to be these fancy double pupil ones from Hairline, but I sure like how these look, so I tie with these ones quite a bit. Oop. Missed the first wrap there, do it over, get one on there, kind of the alternate little X wrap there. So now it's positioned. I like where those guys are at, you can see. Now I'm going to make a series of tight X wraps over the top. Oop, spinning. And just keep quite a bit of tension on this. Alright, so that was about a dozen X wraps there. Now I'm going to go around the eyes, right? I'll do it so you can see there. So I'm going to go around here, then around the shank, around the eye, around the shank. Make about 8 to 10 wraps like this, again with quite a bit of tension. And then finally, what really locks this in and secures it is a bunch of tight wraps around the base of it. Not unlike a parachute post or something. I like to focus on more solid fly tying like that and less on glue. I know some guys prefer to do a little different technique there that involves some super glue or something. Personally, I think that's more than sufficient, what I just did. So now we've got our eyes in there. It's tied on what would be the top of the hook shank. When we're actually fishing this fly, of course it rides like that. So the point will be up and those little eyes will be on the underside. Alright, next step is to tie in the tail. This is a Fish Hunter Blood Quill Marabou. See if you can see that right there. Fish Hunter is some of the best marabou that I've ever tied with. They used to be in Kent, Washington, kind of south of Seattle. And then those guys got absorbed by Nature's Spirit fly tying, I believe. So you can still get this stuff. It's just from Nature's Spirit now instead of from Fish Hunter. It's really good marabou. So the tail, right, this is just one blood quill feather. I like to just kind of swipe it through my fingers like that. Get a pinch that's about equal to kind of between the shank length and the overall hook length. I'm going to switch hands that are holding the material and tie that guy in right above the barb of the hook there. Get 1, 2 wraps, Just check it, make sure you like the length there. I like what I've got going, so I'm going to apply a little bit more tension. And to create a little bit more uniform underbody, I'm actually going to bury this marabou all the way up to just about where the lead eyes are. If you just clipped it right after you tied it in there, you would have kind of an awkward little bump. I like to twist that up. That helps to gather the fibers together. Typically makes it for a little easier to just get one straight cut like that. Now I'm going to go back over it and just kind of bury these fibers. Doesn't have to be perfect right there. Just enough that we have a nice clean foundation to wrap a couple other materials around. That looks pretty good to me. Alright, so the next step that I'm going to do here is tie in. This is medium crystal hackle. It's just sort of like a sparse little chenille, I guess you could call it. Sort of like crystal flash or something, but in a little, it's kind of strung together. So I'm going to capture a little chunk of it there and tie this guy down so it's tied down right next to the tail. And then tie that along the back of the fly there as well. Again, just trying to keep a little bit more uniform underbody. Don't want any great big bumps in there. You can do some cool color combos between the underbody and this crystal hackle. I'm going to do a black underbody and a brown crystal hackle over it now. Our next step is this flash for the underbody. I like holographic flashabou a lot. This Vivus spooled tinsel works well too, and I like this size large. It's a little bit easier than trying to hold a couple strands of flashabou together. So I'll go ahead and tie this guy in right behind the eyes there. And again, what I've said in other videos of mine, you don't really want to tie a material in outright by the end like that. I like to leave just a little bit extra. Maybe make a couple wraps around it there. And then fold that little tag end forward. Make a couple more wraps to capture it. So it's doubled over there, and that's not going to pull out. It's far more secure than if you were to just tie it right in at the end. Cut that tag end a bit shorter. Now I'm going to take this tinsel and wrap it down to where the tail begins and then back. So again, tying on this Dynaking rotary vise that I really like, I'm going to take advantage of using the rotary option. There we go, get that out of the way. This kind of helps me keep an eye on my materials and just make sure that everything's nice and smooth as I go. It's a little bit easier to tie a clean uniform fly this way. The only downside to taking advantage of a rotary vise like this is that you'll end up putting a bunch of wraps in with your thread, so you have to undo them. There is a little attachment for the vise where you can hang that guy off the front, but I've never really liked using it. So I'll undo those wraps there. I think one more looks good. Maybe one more wrap of tinsel. There we go. Great, and tie that off. So I've got one wrap securing it, nice and tight, a lot of tension on there. Two, a third. I'm going to fold that guy over again and just sneak one or two more wraps in there. Third wrap. And again, that just makes it a little bit more durable. I don't like flies that fall apart after you catch a few fish, so I try to do as many little tricks like that to make them tougher. Alright, next step here is to palmer this crystal hackle. We're going to make open wraps and tie it off where the thread's hanging at. This is a little technique that I've kind of pulled from some steelhead fly tying. I like to say steelhead flies, namely winter steelhead flies, should have something that I like to call the illusion of bulk. Using kind of a sparse material like this over a slender underbody will allow your fly to appear bulkier in the water, while actually not retaining much water and not a lot of resistance, so the fly will drop pretty quickly in the water column. Okay, so we're going to palmer this guy forward now. Maybe six wraps, maybe a little more, we'll see. You don't want them touching, like I was saying, just open wraps here. So there's one. I try to swipe those little fibers out of the way each time too. I don't like to capture them in there. I want them to be able to kind of stand out like they are. There's 3. There we go. 4th wrap. I like what I've got there. So we'll get 5 wraps in here, I think, and should look pretty good. Yeah, tie that off right behind the lead eyes. 1 wrap is holding it in. There's another one. 3rd wrap. That should be nice and secure. I'm going to just swipe these fibers out of the way. Take another turn or 2 right in front of that crystal hackle. There we go. Nothing should be coming undone now. One little snip there. We go. Great. So you can see this fly is starting to take shape now. You can still see that black sparkly underbody there that I made with that tinsel, and then I've got the overbody that makes the fly appear to be a little bit bulkier than it actually is. Next step, I like to take and flip the fly upside down here on my rotary vise. If you don't tie on a rotary, you can take the hook out of your vise and flip it over. That works pretty well. Alrighty, after that, these are some silicone bass skirt legs, right? I like the look of the hot tips on these guys. I think Hairline sells these. They're called hot tipped crazy legs. A number of other fly tying options are out there, but these guys work pretty good for me. I'm going to take about 6 of these, so they're kind of oriented on top of the fly, about 3 of them on my side and 3 on the far side. Okay, got just a little bit too many here. Alright. Go. Great. Sorry about that. Alright, so what I like to have is regarding alignment with these legs, I like that little color transition with the hot tipped crazy leg there to be about equal with the bend of the hook. So the leg kind of shows the olive color and then also kind of shows the neon, that chartreuse green color. So I'm going to tie these guys in pretty much right on top of the shank here, right next to where the eyes are. About like that. You can kind of see my alignment there. That's 1 wrap, that's 2. I'm not going to go to a ton of tension yet. I'm going to adjust these guys and line them up with where I want them. Like I said, I kind of want 3 oriented on my side of the fly and 3 on the far side. That looks a little bit better, right? I'll show you the view there. Now I'll take a few more wraps here to secure everything a little bit tighter. That looks pretty good to me. Yeah, good. Alright, now let's trim the tag ends off of these rubber legs. About like that. Those are tied in with a pretty high degree of tension, and the legs are fairly compressible, so the thread grabs a hold of them really nicely. I don't think these things are going to pull out. Another durability thing that I like to take note of. Alright, so we've got everything there. We're tied in kind of behind the eyes there. My next step is to advance my thread just in front of the eyes, and we're going to tie in a clump of deer hair, and that's going to form the head on top of this fly. My olive deer hair right here. Got this. I'm going to cut a clump of it, maybe a little bit larger than the diameter, pretty similar to the diameter of a pencil, for example. Want to cut this right down nice and tight to the hide there, right? So those tips aren't very even, so I'm going to stack this up. But first, I'm going to take my little comb here and comb out the under fur. That kind of soft fuzz that's in there kind of gets in the way. It keeps it from stacking quite as nicely. You can kind of blow on it like that as well. That'll get more of those little fuzzy fibers out of there. Great, so that's cleaned out a lot better now. Now I'm going to put it in my hair stacker and stack it up. Right, there we go. There, see how even the tips are on those now? So now that they're stacked up, I'm just going to carefully grab them out of there, like that. And I want the tips of these deer hair fibers to be about even with the point of the hook on the fly, maybe just a little bit further than that. So holding in my right hand here, I like the length that I've got going, so I'm going to position that right on top, switch the hands that are holding the deer, and I want this to stay on top of the hook. I don't want it to spin, I want to just flare it in place. So I'm going to take one soft wrap, a second soft wrap, kind of make sure I've got everything positioned where I want. I'm going to hold it pretty tightly on top and then apply more tension to my thread, as you can see there. And ideally that stays pretty much on top there. If a little bit of it spins under like it did, that's okay. So I'm pretty happy with how that went. It's actually almost all on top. Now I'm going to go ahead and get all these fibers out of the way. Sneak my thread in front of them. Couple wraps up there, and then we're going to put a whip finish in there. So get those fibers out of the way. This can be a little tricky here if you don't leave yourself much room. I think I'm looking alright though. Let's see, there we go. Oh, undo, redo, there we go. There's 4 turns. Nice little whip finish there. That's great. So now it's just a matter of trimming that deer hair and trimming the rubber legs, and we're all set. It's a pretty straightforward fly. There's not too much going on. Like I was saying, I try to get the illusion of a bulky fly. So let's give this a trim. The best thing for trimming deer hair that I've found are these double-edged razor blades. A little trick that you can do with them is break them in half. They're super flexible, so you can just kind of pinch it, fold them in half like that, and then you're less likely to cut your finger while you're trimming this deer hair, and it makes it a little easier to kind of manipulate them. So I'm going to follow a straight line straight back from this eye for my first cut, and I'm going to give the blade just a little curve. Let's see how that goes. That's a good starting point right there, and then it's just a matter of kind of trimming. Don't get too crazy and end up cutting out the fibers, or don't catch a leg in there and cut that off. So here I try to be a little more careful and cut those last butt ends. I don't want to cut the tapered tips that we stacked up earlier. Pretty close, looking good. I'm going to cut a few of these fibers out just to get a little bit nicer head on that. Looks pretty good. I'm happy with how that guy came out. There's a few fibers in there. No, that's good. Alright, and then our last step here is to just trim the rubber legs. They're a little bit longer than I want them to be. I want these guys to be a bit longer than the tail, maybe half again as long as that tail, right? So I'm going to cut them, oh, missed one. There we go, cut them like that. So that is, oh, a clump of hair I missed there, look at that. Let's get that cleaned up. Great, that's better. So that is my Great Carpholio right there. This fly absolutely dominates here in southwest Montana. Great carp fly. I've caught some big trout on it too, just for fun, casting and stripping it. I know some Denver guys that are doing really well on the Denver South Platte and some of those front range ponds where you guys have all those huge carp down there. So yeah, give this guy a shot. Yeah, hope you enjoy it. Any color, any size that makes sense to you, you should give it a try. Yeah, thanks for watching this video. If you got any questions, hit me up in the comments. If you want to see me tie one of my other flies, I'll definitely entertain any requests you can think of. So yeah, hit me up on Instagram, Andrew Grillos Fly Fishing, or message me in the comments here. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you watching.